for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Stanislaus, I'd like to kind of move, in our area, where one of the biggest sites we have to deal with is the Portland Harbor. There's a Superfund site, and the defense industry, big partner in contaminating that during World War II, and now not so much of a partner in cleaning the thing up at the end of the day for a lot of the reasons that have been mentioned here. But I'm concerned about EPA's approach to that harbor. You've got a number of businesses that have stepped up, formed this lower Willamette group, trying to figure a way to actually clean this up or be a partner in cleaning it up without the federal government, frankly, at this stage of the game. And I'm worried about the science that's involved in this. Particularly, I guess I want to know from you, is it common practice to do a qualitative and not a quantitative analysis of the cleanup alternatives?
Well, I think we have, in fact, done a quantitative analysis.
Well, see, I would disagree with that. There is not a quantitative analysis done. In the report I saw on the feasibility study, there's no evaluation of what the concentrations of various contaminants would be after different remedial actions have been taken. I think most of the businesses, they're going to be funding this, anybody that's doing any scientific analysis, you're supposed to do a cost-effectiveness analysis. Once you've determined the health risk, then what are the most cost-effective ways to take care of this stuff? And that's not what I'm seeing in the report. I guess I'd like you to get back to me with that information where there's a quantitative analysis of that. The other question I had is regarding natural recovery. Is it common for natural recovery to be ignored by EPA when they do remedial action analyses?
No, if I can give a broad answer. So we've conducted a remedial investigation which identifies...
I'm asking about natural recovery.
As part of the alternatives analysis, we would look at the various alternatives, including that kind of alternative.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, because that's not what's done in this particular feasibility study on the Portland Harbor. The natural recovery aspects, the quantitative aspects of what natural recovery are not being included at all. Matter of fact, you can't, I would argue respectfully, scientifically evaluate, how a particular remedial action, capping, dredging is going to work, what benefit you're going to get from that, unless you know what the natural recovery benefit is going forward. Matter of fact, just down the river, or up the river actually at Willamette Falls, there's a site that was grossly contaminated as a paper mill, and environmental agencies have determined that it does not pose any real contaminant risk, because natural recovery has completely wiped that out. Admittedly, it's a higher flowing river at that particular point. So I'm not seeing that going forward. The other thing I'm worried about is, in this particular case, is how they've evaluated these alternatives. Is it normal for EPA to assume that dredging is going to go on 24 hours a day, 6 days a week in a water work window? Is that the normal way you would evaluate?
Well, it'll depend on the facts of the particular circumstance. So we evaluate alternatives, be it...
Would you assume that that the dredging operation would go 24 hours a day, 6 days a week in a recovery action?
Well, I can't say a generalized rule. It will depend.
I think most people. I apologize for interrupting you, but I would say most people would say that's unrealistic. That's not the way any operation works at the end of the day. And what happens with that is then you're underestimating the costs of some particular remedial actions. And I see that in this particular feasibility study. I think that's unfair and unrealistic, and you end up skewing the results of your feasibility study and the effectiveness of different remedial actions when you do that. Question also on principal threat waste. How do you determine the levels of different contaminants so that they constitute a principal threat waste? What procedure to use?
Yeah, let me get back to you on that, regarding that. But the whole purpose of the draft feasibility is actually to entertain.
The reason I asked that particular question, again, sorry to interrupt, I want to have a limited amount of time, is that I think that's important. What we're seeing here now is that there's low and unprecedented levels, I'd argue, of determining these principal threat waste levels in this feasibility study for the Portland Harbor. And as a result, you're doing treatments in addition to removal, in addition to capping. I mean, without any analysis, does that treatment of this so-called principal threat waste going to give you an additional benefit? Again, the science that I see EPA not using in this group, and with these willing set of businesses wanting to step up and do the right thing without any federal largesse, and they're being cast aside. I think it's it's terrible reputation that EPA is developing, unfortunately, in our region, and could drive the cost. We've heard costs of hundreds of millions of dollars. You know, the whole defense industry, maybe $1 billion a year. They're talking billions of dollars for this one little Superfund site. And I think that there's estimates by others that it could be in the millions to maybe hundreds of millions of dollars. So there's a big difference, respectfully, between what EPA is looking at and the assumptions they're using that reasonable business and scientific experts would get to do the same amount of cleanup at the end of the day. So I appreciate getting back to me on some of that information.
Yeah, I will get back to you, and I can assure you that we've discussed the science with all the stakeholders. And in fact, we really appreciate the responsible party stepping up. You know, from the very beginning of the process, we looked at the scope of the science, conducted the science in an open and inclusive way, and we will continue to do so.